Here's an interesting story from the New York Times. One afternoon in late September, hundreds of students at Timber Creek High School in Orlando poured into the campus's sprawling central courtyard to hang out and eat lunch. For members of an extremely online generation, their activities were decidedly analog. Dozens sat in small groups, animatedly talking with one another. Others played pickleball or on makeshift lunchtime courts. There was not a cell phone in sight, and that was no accident. In May, Florida passed a law requiring public school districts to impose rules barring student cell phone use during the class time. This fall, Orange County Public Schools, which includes Timber Creek High, went even further, barring students from using cell phones during the entire day. In interviews, a dozen Orange County parents and students all said they supported the no phone rules during class, but they objected to their district's stricter day-long ban. Parents said their children should be able to contact them directly during free periods, while students described the all-day ban as unfair and infantilizing. Sophia Ferrara, a 12th grader at Timber Creek, who needs to use mobile devices during free periods to take online college classes, says, they expect us to take responsibility for our own choices, but then they are taking away the ability for us to make a choice and to learn responsibility. And then there were other protests and so on. Continues, says, other students said schools seem more prison-like without their phones. To call their parents, they noted, students must now go to the front office and ask permission to use the phone. Surveillance has also intensified. To enforce the ban, Lyle Lake, a Timber Creek security officer, now patrols lunch period on a golf cart, nabbing students violating the ban and driving them to the front office, where they must place their phones in a locked cabinet for the rest of the day. Orange County students described the ban as regressive, noting that they could no longer use their phones to check their class schedules during school, take photos of their projects in art class, find their friends at lunch, or even add the phone numbers of their new classmates to their contact lists. Catalina, an 8th grader at a local middle school, said, imagine that the device you use on a daily basis to communicate with other people is completely gone. It feels completely isolating. Okay. The only thing, well, I'm not going to say it's surprising, but the only thing notable about something like this is that this is not already the policy in every school in the country. You know, it is insane, in fact, that a school completely banning cell phones in school entirely, that this is such a notable exception that it gets an entire New York Times article about it. That's how notable it is. Which I guess shows how naive I am, because I got to say, I am actually surprised by that. I sort of, as you know, my kids don't go to public school. I guess I figured that most schools already had a policy that you can't have phones in school at all. And then, you know, a lot of kids ignore it. That's what I figured. I figured the kids that are on the phone at school, and I know that many are, but I figured they were breaking the rules in doing that. Come to find out that apparently it's extremely rare for a school to say you cannot have phones here at all during school hours. Which is, again, it's just crazy. And it creates an impossible situation. Is it any surprise that we have so many kids who are graduating without having learned anything? You know, we played the video several days ago of the teacher. I think it was a 7th grade teacher talking about how kids are so far behind, they're delayed. You know, he's got kids in his class who are on a 3rd grade reading level, and many different factors are blamed on that. People talk about the lockdowns, the COVID lockdowns, that had something to do with it. And there are many factors that go into it. But this right here is like the main factor. Okay, if you want to know why there are so many kids who are not learning at school, it's because they all have phones and they're on their phones the whole time. They are totally distracted the entire time while they're at school through for many of them their entire experience in grade school. And it's not possible to teach them. You know that I can be plenty critical of public school teachers, and for good reason, but I also sympathize with them for many reasons as well. And here is one. Like, what are you supposed to do as a public school teacher if the school has not banned phones? You're competing. You can't compete. Now you're competing constantly for the kids. It's hard. Back in the dark old days when cell phones didn't exist, at least smartphones didn't exist, and which is most of my time in public school, that was the case. And back then, it was hard enough for the teachers to get the kids' attention because there are many other things you can be distracted by. But at least everybody was present in the room with you. Like everyone's sitting in the room physically, and yeah, they might be distracted because they're writing notes, passing notes along, or they're goofing off with their friends or something. But everything is like, all the distractions at least are located in the room with you. And now these teachers are competing with the whole world outside because these kids have their eyes glued to this portal that takes them out into the digital world. And so the teachers are competing with like the entire universe to get the kids' attention. And it's impossible. It is impossible. This is what it comes to. It's not overstating the case. Well, if you didn't already know, Pure Talk is planning to alleviate $10 million in veteran debt by Veterans Day. They'll get there by giving a portion of every new order to this cause. With just 2 weeks ago, Pure Talk is 74% of the way there, but they still need your support. Think about this. The U.S. military is made up of 100% volunteers. These are men and women who willingly sacrifice everything they have for this country. When they're done serving, they return home to a tight job market and outrageous living expenses. That's why I'm so happy a private company like Pure Talk has jumped in to help. When you switch to Pure Talk's lightning-fast 5G network, they'll donate a portion of every new order to this noble cause. You can make a real difference just by choosing superior cell phone service. Pure Talk's plans start at just $20 a month, offering unlimited talk, text, more data, and a mobile hotspot. Just go to puretalk.com/Walsh and make the switch. Let's rally together and show unwavering support for our veterans. Visit puretalk.com/Walsh and switch to Pure Talk today. It's the right move, and it's the American way. That's puretalk.com/Walsh today. Unless we ban cell phones in every school for the entire school day, kids are not going to learn. We're just going to see a total collapse of the educational progress of kids entirely. This does not work. And we're seeing this is the great experiment that is being run right now, because really Gen Z, just now getting out of high school age, they're really the first generation that had cell phones through their entire childhood. And let's take a look at them and see how it's working out. Is it working out? Are we happy with the progress? Do we feel like they graduated high school and they're intelligent, well-rounded, knowledgeable people in the way that we want them to be? By and large, does anyone feel that way? No, it's a total disaster. And unless we take what I guess seems like drastic measures, unless we do that, there's no hope for these kids. Of course you have to ban it. And the fact that you've got kids, and I don't blame any of the kids in this, they're interviewed in the article. I don't blame them for being completely attached to their phones. It's how they were raised. But when you have an 8th grader saying that it's totally isolating, I mean, think about that for a second. She feels completely isolated if she doesn't have her phone with her, even though she's in a classroom. She's in a school with like hundreds of other kids. She's in a physical environment surrounded by people, including her peers, and yet she feels isolated if she doesn't have her phone with her. Now, again, that's not to criticize her. That's to criticize the parents who allowed her to develop that kind of dependency on the phone. That without it, for these kids, like a limb, it's a part of them. And you take it away, they don't know what to do. It feels like prison to not have their phone for a few hours, which is all the more evidence that they need to not have their phone for a few hours. In fact, they shouldn't have their phones at all. And I just can't believe some of these parents that also object to taking the phones away. Well, how am I going to get in touch with my kid? What? Why? What, do you need to call them 5 times a day? In fact, you can get in touch with them. You can call. What do you think happened? For the entire history of school up until the last few years, what do you think parents did? Okay, I went to school. We didn't have phones. most of the time, my parents didn't need to get in touch with me during this. It's a very rare thing that your parent actually needs to get in touch with you during the school day. But if they needed to, they could call the front office. That happens sometimes. They could drive to the school where I am. I mean, there are ways to do it. It's not that hard. And if you really feel, parents, that your kids need to have a phone on them so that you can get in touch with them at any moment, because they can't walk out of your sight for a second without you being able to immediately speak to them. If you really feel that way, well, then you can get your kid a dumb phone. You can get your kid a flip phone that, and you can set it up so that they can only call 3 numbers and they can only text 3 numbers, and it's you and dad and whoever and a sibling. And you could do that. Those kinds of phones exist. They're pretty cheap. There's no reason, and that solves that problem completely. And yet most of these parents aren't doing that. They give their kids smartphones with full internet access. They send them to school with those phones, and then they claim that they're only doing it so that, well, I need to be able to just in case my kid gets kidnapped, I need to be able to call them. Well, we know that's not the reason, because as I said, there's a solution to that. You can get them a kind of phone that doesn't have internet access, can't call and text, but it can at least call and text you, and that's it. You can do that. Every parent, unless you're an idiot, you know that you can do that. You choose not to. You have chosen to give your kid this massive distraction. You have chosen to make sure that your kid goes to school and is distracted every second of every day. It's insane. It is crazy. And I know you've heard me say it a million times, but I do just have to remind you, if you think that it's impossible for a kid to function without a phone, I'm here to tell you it's not. My kids do. None of my kids have phones. We are I do this for a living. I work in media, okay? We have to be very plugged in and aware of what's going on in the world. It's not like we're living off in the woods it's not like we're living a 17th century lifestyle, as much as I maybe would enjoy that if we were, but we're not. And yet we manage to have kids that don't have smartphones. It is possible to do. It's very possible. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.